Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for logging in today to our webinar on finding hidden real estate deals. We have a special guest who's going to join us today and discuss his strategies and his company strategies for different, finding those real deals that aren't on the MLS, that are maybe a little bit more difficult to find. So hopefully you'll enjoy the presentation. I do want to go through a few quick things here as we move along. First, my name is Scott Maurer. I'm the Director of Business Development here for Advanta IRA. I've been with the company for a number of years, doing a number of different things here at Advanta. I've spent most of the last few years really focusing on the business development side. I do a lot of live speaking events, and certainly events like the one you're attending today, where we're bringing in a guest speaker, someone who's going to share their knowledge, share their information. This is really what I enjoy about my job, is doing this type of work. And getting to talk with the great speakers that we bring in. A quick disclaimer on Advanta IRA for those of you who either are familiar or unfamiliar with what we do and don't do. A couple of things we don't do is we don't provide legal, tax, or investment advice, and we do not endorse any products, and we're not affiliated with any other companies, including any companies or individuals that are guest presenters at any of our live events or our webinars. So we will a lot of times talk in our webinars and seminars about legal and tax issues, but we don't give any guidance from that standpoint. We can certainly refer you to people who can give you that type of advice, whether it's an attorney or a CPA. And importantly, when it comes to making an investment inside of your IRA account, we do not give you any investment advice, and we don't do any due diligence for your IRA and at the investment that you're looking at making. So it's important that you understand that and make sure that if you're looking to invest with a self-directed IRA, that you understand that you're taking on those requirements when it comes to doing the due diligence and really making sure the investment is right for you. Just a little bit about our company. We have over $1 billion under assets in our two offices that are in both Tampa is our main office, and also in Atlanta, where we do a lot of education and networking up there as well. We work with individuals who are all over the country. We've been in the industry for over 15 years now, and we really try to pride ourselves on our customer service experience, where we give everybody a personal touch by placing each new account with an account manager, one person in our office who will help you out regarding anything with your account, whether it's a new investment, questions you might have, as well as just general IRA questions as well. And that's something we really have seen a benefit over the years in us doing that. And kind of, again, our commitment, other than our customer service, we really, again, pride ourselves on that, is on the education that we provide. It's the events, the webinars, the seminars that we put on. Again, sometimes the events that we do are self-directed. We're talking specifically about just self-directed IRAs and buying real estate, or some of the rules that are involved. But we also a lot of times will bring in guest speakers like Charles Sells we have today from the PIP group to talk about their specific expertise and their specific industry. So again, what we really pride ourselves on, customer service, and also the on-demand and access to education that we offer as well. So just quickly want to cover a few things before I bring Charles on. And again, what I would say is anyone who's listening live to the presentation today, you can type your question into the screen. Make sure you type it in there. We'll get to it when we get a chance. We're going to try to leave some time at the end for questions, but we can also hopefully maybe answer some questions as we go along. So just type your questions in as you go along, whether it's for Charles or for myself. But again, why do people self-direct? Very quickly, there's three buckets I think people fall into, and sometimes you might fall into more than one. For some, it's just a new source of capital. So if you're looking at finding that next hidden gem of a real estate deal, you might just simply realize that, hey, I can use my IRA as the cash to actually purchase that asset. It's just a new source of capital for you when you come across a deal that you can't pass up. Hey, my IRA, my old 401k, that money, I'll just use that in order to take advantage of this opportunity. For a lot of our clients, there's the fatigue of the stock market. The ups and downs we've seen over the last several months, some pretty wild swings on a day-to-day basis. And for a lot of individuals, that gets old, that gets tired. I want to find something where I can put my money into an investment, I can sit back, I can just enjoy it, not worry about it because I'm in control. And so for, again, some people that just want to be out of the market, and for others, it's the tax benefits. Investing through an IRA, whether you're buying stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, or whether you're investing in real estate, all of the income, the profits that are generated from that investment accrue back to your IRA on a tax-free or tax-deferred basis, depending on the type of an account that you have. So again, a lot of people that come to Advanta, or at least that we've talked to over the years who are self-directing, probably fit into more than one of these particular buckets. Now, as far as the types of accounts that can be self-directed, any type of IRA, traditional Roth IRAs, if you're for individuals, if you're a business owner, you may have a SEP or a simple IRA. If your account that you currently have has a designation of IRA in the title, you can absolutely self-direct it. It's a matter of simply doing a trustee to trustee tax-free transfer into a self-directed account. We also offer individual 401k plans for solo, self-employed individuals. And another big bucket on the bottom of this slide, the former employer plan. So anyone who has an old 401k, an old 403b plan, an old 457, those can also be rolled over into a self-directed IRA and then invested from there. The one restriction on employer plans like 401ks and 403bs is in some instances, your current plan may not allow you to do that, what they call an in-plan rollover to an IRA. So you may have some restrictions as long as you're still employed. But once you are retired, you leave a company, you quit, that money can certainly be rolled over into a self-directed IRA. Now, as far as the types of assets that people can invest in, we see all over the map real estate, private placements, hedge funds, mobile homes, gold and silver. There's a lot of different things you can do. I would probably say 70 to 75% of our business at Advanta IRA is related to real estate. Again, whether you're buying a rental property or a rehab, you're investing maybe in a private multifamily syndication, or you're lending money out of your IRA. Again, a lot of what we do is real estate based, which is why we brought our guest speaker on today, who's Charles Sells of the PIP Group. He's going to talk to us about finding hidden real estate deals. Charles, how are you doing today?
Good. How about you, Scott?
Very good. I'm going to go ahead and give you control here of the slides, and I would again encourage everyone who is listening live to the presentation to type your questions into the chat box. We'll make sure we get to these as we go along. But Charles, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and take it away.
Fantastic. I appreciate it, Scott. Yeah. So just a footnote on self-direct IRAs. Something I learned just this year, and we've been working with self-direct IRAs for about 20 years now, is that only 3% of Americans know that this is even an option they can use to invest. So I'm hoping that we have a lot of our prospects on this call as well, so they can learn and understand how to find hidden sources of capital, also as well as hidden deals. So I did find that to be very interesting. But let's just jump right into it. Let me get. There was a little lag in the slides earlier.
There we go.
Okay, so a little bit about me. I started investing in distressed real estate at 23. I'm 45 now, so I've been down in the trenches for a long time and continue to be. At 26, with about $4,000, I started the first company, which was Platinum Investment Properties Group. That became a long thing to put on a logo and on a website. So we just condensed it down to the PIP Group, and that's who we are today. We've done magazines. I'm often asked to be a moderator or a panelist at large real estate events. So that's me in a nutshell. Now, the PIP Group provides a wide range of services to both individual and institutional investors. It's all within the distressed real estate arena. The services are for anything ranging from self-direct IRA investors with $50,000 that want to do fix and flips, to doing auditing services for hedge funds who are buying, in large bulk sales. We'll talk about Florida a little bit later in the presentation, and why we don't buy in Florida. But with close to 20 years in business, like I said, we've got about 1,000 clients, and we are worldwide. We've got funds in Norway we work with, and in England. So we're well known around the world. So what is distressed real estate? Distressed real estate is things like tax liens, tax deeds, secondary market tax liens we'll talk about, pre-deeds, and bank foreclosures. So bank foreclosures, everyone tends to associate that with a fix and flip. Come on, slide. They're moving slow.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so contrary to popular belief, a lot of folks on this call and a lot that will hear this broadcast in the recorded version have caught the midday and the late night infomercials about getting rich quick and investing in distressed real estate and how glamorous and gorgeous it is. And I'll be the first to tell you, off-market deals in distressed real estate is not sexy. People get tired of me saying that, but it's very profitable if you put in the hours and you put in the hard work. But it's a game that should be played by margins, not emotions, is something I like to tell people. So let's look at some off-market deals. The first ones we're going to look at is lenders and wholesalers. We have lenders, we have online auctions that a lot of wholesalers use to offload their properties. You've got auction.com, which I'm sure everybody on this call has heard of, but there's a number of them out there as well. That if you just Google, online wholesaler or online real estate auction, all these guys are going to pop up. The hidden caveat is they're all going to also charge a buyer's premium. So when you are looking at buying through an online auction, you need to see what the fine print is. Is it a 6% buyer's premium? Is it a 5%? Is there no buyer's premium? Sometimes they've been sitting on the auction block so long that they've removed the buyer's premium to try and get that property sold. So that's always something to keep an eye out for as well when you're figuring out your budget for what you want. Now, this particular property, I know, again, it it doesn't look very sexy, and it actually looks pretty scary. But we picked this one up. This one happens to be one my wife and I picked up in our personal account through Hubzu. One of our real estate agents brought it to our attention, said, "Hey, nobody seems to really be looking at this. Maybe you guys want to make a bid on it." So we said, "Sure, we'll give it a shot." And as you can see, my wife was the winning bidder. We bought this beach house for a little over $2 million. And if you see there, the important conditions of the purchase, that's the buyer's premium. So we had close to $60,000 just in the premium associated to this property. Now you can't see this appraisal, but this is essentially the house we bought, and it falls into the category of a wholesale deal. We bought it for a lot less than it's worth. So this is a blown up picture of that appraisal, and as you can see, the as repaired value on it is $3.8 million, and the as is value was 2.3. So we paid roughly 2.1. So we could then turn it around, just flip it for the appraised of 2.3, and that essentially would be a wholesale deal. We like fix and flips. We like to maximize that return. That's what that's our bread and butter. So we're putting some money in this, and we're going to sell it for the repaired value. So this one's obviously big on the scale, but again, this is our personal one. And with that, I'll say that we don't invest on behalf of our clients in the areas that we invest on for ourselves personally, because we consider that would be a conflict of interest. So I just get that out there. This one is literally about a mile from my office. So our total purchase on it was $2,126,250. We're putting about $250,000 in repairs into it now, for a total investment of about 2.4-ish. We'll resell it for about 3.8. And the net on that would be about 3.6. So our profit on it is huge by doing the fix and flip. We could have made essentially a better annualized profit if we just did a wholesale deal, because we would have earned 10% on it right off the top. But by holding it for about 6 months, we're gonna cash on cash is gonna be a lot better, and that's essentially what we wanted to go for in this particular deal. So online auctions can be a great source for wholesale deals. And as you can see,
Charles, I got a quick
yes.
question. But would you still consider like an online auction though, kind of still an off-market deal though, because it's just something where the general public doesn't know to go to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we buy a lot of online auction deals. Auction.com obviously can be pretty competitive, but most people don't know there's all these other ones out there, and they're selling a lot of properties nationally as well. So you don't have nearly as much bidding going on. Hubzu is big, but they're not Auction.com big. So there just weren't a lot of people looking at this. We put one bid in, and we never had a competing bid come back. So yeah, absolutely. Online auctions are being utilized by wholesalers and by the banks. So absolutely, I consider it an off-market deal.
Okay, yeah, and I had a quick question popped up from someone said, can I do a checkbook 401k with Advanta? The answer, absolutely yes. We can certainly handle a checkbook 401k, even the checkbook IRA. So I'd encourage the individual who is reaching out, we can reach out to you as well and get you the information on that. So again, as we're doing the webinar here, you have questions. Charles is having some great examples here. Get your questions typed in and we'll make sure we get them asked. Charles, go right ahead.
All right. So the next thing you can do is live auctions, right? I mean, this is still considered off market, and this is about as recent a picture as I could possibly give you. This was taken. Well, this one was from last month, but we're actually at the auction as we speak. And what you see here is there are actually 4 different auctions going on at one time. And you can do this in any county. You can find out what day they do the auctions. In Georgia, they do it the first Tuesday of every month, and they have attorney staff come out. And you can see this guy over here on the right in shorts and a button down, and he's essentially just reading the legal descriptions and quietly auctioning off the property. Over to the far left, there's an auction.com content going on there. In the far back, that's a tax sale going on. So these go on in Georgia every first Tuesday every month, and I believe Florida is similar. But live auctions is obviously off market. This is where a lot of wholesalers acquire their properties to then wholesale them. So a great option for acquiring property as well. A lot comes up where they say, oh, it's being sold on the courthouse steps. It literally is. In this case, it's just being sold on the courthouse grounds, but it's rain or shine. They're going to conduct that auction whether there's a monsoon outside or 110-degree heat index. And believe me, we've been in all those situations. So this essentially was a fix and flip we did, acquired at auction. Again, it's not sexy, but the margins are great. The net annualized return on it was 20%. The cash on cash on it was 28%. It's a teeny tiny little house in Savannah, Georgia. You can see that teeny tiny little, that's the kitchen. So you can see you don't get a lot of counter space. But what we invest in is what we call recession-proof properties. Always going to be those first-time home buyer properties. Now, this picture is a snapshot of exactly what happened with the transaction of that little tiny property. The purchase price at the auction was roughly $2,800. All in, it was $38,190. Now, if you go down towards the bottom, the days to sale, you can see that we hung on to this one for a minute. So 523 days. That's about 200 days longer than we like to hang on to anything. But our margins were still, off the charts. 28% cash on cash, annualized to 20%. So wholesale deals, live auctions, great places to get opportunities for your investments in through your SD IRA.
Yeah, and actually, Charles had a great question pop up just now too. Someone, because you were just talking about obviously live auction and then also the online auctions as well. The question was, do you think there's any major difference in properties which are sold online or in live auction? And this person's talking about cost-wise, but I guess I would extend that as well to any different in quality of property when you contrasting and comparing the online auction with the live auction.
So online auction, and I get into this in other presentations as well. There's no difference as far as contrast in property. There's a difference in contrast of competitiveness. Live auctions can get a little catty. especially if you're new to a live auction. So there's a little more emotion driven in it, and sometimes it can get investors in trouble, and the bids get out of hand. And I mean, we've seen people get so catty that they're going to win that bid whether they buy it at retail, and it should have been sold far below wholesale because it has problems like the example you see here. I would definitely recommend anyone who is interested in online to attend a live auction just to feel the differences, because online too, it's real easy to just click that button. You say, all right, my max is $60,000. Well, all of a sudden now my max is $61,000, and something that these auctioneers won't tell you they're doing, but they are doing, is sometimes they increase those bids behind the scenes to try and get to the reserve. If you hold tight, that property may come up the next month, or because you have to register for the auction, and sometimes if you're new to it, you have to put down like a $2,500 deposit. They'll reach out to you after the auction and say, hey, you missed the bid by $3,000. Are you willing to come up $3,000? And at that time, you can say, well, yes, I'll come up $3,000, or no, I'll just wait for it to come up next month. And knowing the bank or the wholesaler has lowered that reserve, I'll get it at that point. We've acquired a lot of properties that way as well.
Another quick question came up too when you're talking about these online and live auctions. How do you do the due diligence on those particular properties? What kind of things do you rely on? This may be something you're going to talk about in a minute, which we can do, but if that's something you can answer quickly,
Yeah,
what
no,
do you do?
that's a great question. So everything comes up um, as far as 90 days in advance of the auction. Now, a lot's going to drop off, a lot's going to get paid off. So what our due diligence is let's use Georgia for example. If the sale is the first Tuesday of every month, on that Friday at 3 o'clock, at 4 o'clock, we're going to get what is left to go to that auction. And we're going to do title work on it. We're going to do physical inspections on it. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these properties are still occupied, and they may be occupied by the person who has been foreclosed on, because these are foreclosure auctions. So we consider time value of money for eviction time, repairs. Are they going to go quietly? So due diligence on auction properties, whether online or physical, is everything but being able to get inside the property. Sometimes they're already vacant and you can, but most times, 9 times out of 10, they're likely still occupied, so you can't get in there. And until you hold that deed, you're essentially trespassing on the property. So we won't drop dumpsters or do anything to do a clean out until we actually physically hold that deed in our hands, because stuff happens. When we were going through the last financial crisis, and they had boiler room foreclosures going on, and mortgages going on, a lot of paperwork was missed, and foreclosures were being done, and the paperwork wasn't right, so the foreclosure actually didn't happen, and it was rejected, and it just created a whole mess. So we don't even walk on the property until we actually have deed to it.
And how do you? I'm sorry. How do you handle any liens on the property? Anything? Do you do like a preliminary title search, or?
We do a preliminary title search, absolutely, and then those guys that are auctioning it off, they are reading off any liens that we may have missed as well. We're a little because we are the company we're a little more resourced in that when we're at the auction and we start bidding, we have somebody in the office that's doing more due diligence on comparables as we're bidding. We have an attorney in Atlanta who's essentially on standby, and we're calling him to make sure there's no second mortgages or anything that's really going to bite us. Was there a bankruptcy recently filed to try and stop the foreclosure? Those kind of things. Because again, the title work is as good as the title person doing the work. So we like to put a lot of redundancies in place to make sure we've covered all of that. And sometimes it still happens. We have an example right now where the bankruptcy was filed 2 days after the auction, which essentially was too late. It shouldn't have bogged us down or tied us up, but it has. So it's going to certainly impact our our annualized return. But we've bought right, which is again something I always say: as long as you buy right, you can account for these unforeseen circumstances that may come up. One example is we always assume that the HVAC is going to be shot. We're going to have to replace it, and if we don't, well, that's anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 that we save, that goes directly into the profit margins of the investor. So, but due diligence wise, it's pretty in depth to make sure that we're catching everything there is to catch.
Okay, yeah, Charles, we had a couple other questions. I'm going to save some of those. I'll let you continue on here for a little bit, and then we'll see what other questions pop up.
Okay. All right, so wholesale deals. So these wholesale deals came up literally, I think, last week when we were just getting ready to send you guys the slides. And I called one of our contacts in Florida. Actually, we do not do any investing in Florida right now, and I'll talk about that more later. But he's in the area that was impacted last year heavily by the hurricane, and there are tons of wholesale deals going on right now, and the margins on them are just huge. I know you mentioned that you guys have an office in Tampa, so this isn't too far from a lot of your investors' backyards. And I can put you in touch with this wholesaler if anybody wants to see what they have now. These things are going so quickly that I'm sure the examples I'm showing you have already been acquired. But the slide's kind of quick and dirty. I just took literally his notes from it. Purchase price is $140,000. It's kind of funny. He says it now has a view, so obviously a lot of damage from the hurricane. But the after repair value on it is $250 to $275. It's livable now, just needs a new roof. It's a little messy out there, obviously, but they're going very quickly. So if it needs a new roof, needs new floors, we consider new roof, new floors. Let's go ahead and paint it. Let's just put a lot of lipstick on it, do the cosmetics inside and out, and for all of that, we can be in and out of there on a 3-2 for about $30,000. So assume your total investment is going to be 170, 180 with a resale price of anywhere from 250 to 275. Now, I mentioned the thing of time value of money. So the goal isn't to get in there and get emotional with the floor colors you're going to pick and the fixtures you're going to put in, because that slows you down and that hurts your margins. You get in there quick with the same stuff at the same property all the time. So that way, when you do get that cash on cash, the cash on cash is nice, but the annualized is even nicer because you're in and out of there in 6 to 9 months, which is what we like to see. But the example I did show you was 523 days. So you want to be able to build that into your end of the day, if you will, margins and your return. That stuff can happen and does happen. That bankruptcy I mentioned, that'll still push a 24% return to our investor annualized, but it's dragging out a lot longer to get there.
Hey, and actually one of the questions, Charles, someone had mentioning the time holding. Someone asked kind of why are you holding on to properties for more than 300 days? Is it something where you certainly don't plan for it, it's other issues pop up? Or are there some projects going in, hey, this is going to take a while?
Well, so real estate is all of the above. So real estate is it's a seasonal product. So sometimes if we buy something in July, we're probably going to have that deed in September or October. That's coming into the slow period of real estate resale. Spring is when all of that happens. So that plays a role into it in itself. The other role is when you buy these from wholesalers are quicker, but when you buy from banks through the live auctions or the online auctions, you're sort of at their mercy as to when they're going to get you the deed. And it can take 3 to 4 months to get it every single time. So you're not even able to drop that dumpster and even get started for 3 months. So there are a lot of varying factors as to why. Sometimes maybe it just we got backlogged and we needed more time to do repairs, or we had a situation where they tried to do a bankruptcy and it didn't happen. A lot of these folks, when you do an eviction, we call them habitual squatters. They know the system, they know how it works, and they play it very, very well. We had one last year that sticks out. The property wasn't even in her name. The foreclosure was in her husband, her not even her husband, her live-in husband, so not even by law. She managed to play that out for 9 months before we could even get the eviction done and get started on doing the repairs to the property. Now, because it took us so long, we worked with her and said, hey, if you leave nicely and leave it clean, we'll put you in an extended stay for 2 weeks until you can figure out what you're going to do. So that costs us $600 and saves us at least 2 weeks on repairs that might not be necessary and costs that might not be necessary. So that's kind of a technique that you can think about and consider if you're doing an eviction to get them out, peacefully, if you will. That's not going to happen all the time, but sometimes you can make that happen. So here's just another wholesale. Again, this one's in Florida in the Panhandle area there. So 170,000 lakefront property, lot next door or near, sold for 175. The ARV on this one is 325. Just based on the insulation that's falling out of the ceiling, I would say this is probably going to need mold remediation. It's going to need obviously a new roof, possibly some structural repairs as well. So you're probably going to be into this one for more, probably closer to $50,000-$60,000 in repair. But again, your time value of money on your resale is going to be fantastic, far above average. So wholesalers is another great off-market opportunity that you can consider. This is just another one. This one doesn't have a lot of detail on it. This one, it doesn't even have an offer. They just want you to come and make an offer. So that comes up and happens a lot too. This is a huge ranch, 3,000 square foot ranch, riverfront property. So these are literally just wholesale deals. In preparation for this webinar, I just called the guy and said, hey, throw me 3. I know they'll be gone, but I'd like to share what the opportunity is down there.
And a quick question, I know you're going to jump off wholesalers here in a second, but someone asked, is the wholesaler typically that's sending you this, do they actually own the property, or do they just have the property under contract?
So it can be both. That's a great question, actually. Something that you should consider when you're buying through a wholesaler. The question you ask is, are you representing the owner? Are you an intermediary to the owner? An intermediary is just somebody who's trying to pass it along and make a buck in between. So they're wholesaling it to you, but essentially they're wholesaling it to you with a markup. So if they're truly representing the owner, then there will obviously still be a commission that's paid to them, but it's not being marked up and then being offloaded to you.
All right. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, continue on your next area of off-market deals.
All right, let's see if we can get these slides to advance. All right, tax distress. So I got my start in this business in tax distressed real estate. I started buying tax liens in Illinois. That's really how we built the business and the brand. But at the time, I was buying tax distress liens in Arizona, in Indiana, in South Carolina. And for a minute there, we were helping folks in Florida, but then the online auction started, and we've been out of there, essentially since that happened. Probably, I'd say at least 15 years ago. So we don't buy tax liens in Florida anymore, but we will talk about tax deeds because there's an opportunity with that. So hybrid lien auctions. Hybrid lien auctions are pretty cool because they pay very well, and it's a tax lien that essentially works like a tax deed. So what happens is you go to an auction in Florida. I showed you that one picture where there were 3 foreclosure auctions going on and 1 tax sale going on. So the people that were attending that tax sale, what they were getting was if they won the bid, they were getting 20% penalty within 0 to 12 months if the homeowner paid it off or the mortgage company. There's 1 year right to redemption there. Once you start the foreclosure process in Georgia, that 20% goes up to 30%, and it includes attorney's fees and cost to foreclose. And premium bids earn full penalty. Now, I'm kind of skipping ahead and with the assumption that you guys all know what these definitions mean: premium bids, penalty versus prorate. But we'll illustrate that a little better with this slide. Now, this is a hypothetical example of a home value of $175,000. Now, based on PIP's standard budgeting and strategy, we wouldn't buy that property for more than $105,000. So when the taxes were advertised at the sale, and we stood in front of that lady in the picture I showed you, she said the opening bid was $2,600. We bid that up to $105,000. So the premium on it is $102,400. Now, every state is different, but in the state of Georgia, if you buy a hybrid lien like this, your entire investment earns a 20% penalty. So that means that if I bought this hybrid lien on a Tuesday, and we went to the mortgage company and said, "Hey guys, you forgot to pay the taxes. Your homeowner's not going to be too happy with you," and they say, "You know what? Let's just keep this off the record, and we'll get these taxes paid on Friday." Oops, our mistake. They owe you 20% total on that investment. So that $105,000 becomes a 20% penalty. $21,000 total owed if redeemed is $126,000. Now, a strategy we use in Georgia is we look for properties that have a mortgage attached, and the taxes just happen to slip through. And in most cases, especially in the state of Georgia, the taxes are usually escrowed into your mortgage payment. So if the taxes get missed, it's usually on the mortgage company, not the homeowner. That's not always the case, but that's usually the case. So homeowner does not have to pay the premium bid to pay the redemption. That's county held. Homeowner does not have to pay the penalties and interest on the total purchase price. Does. If it is lost in foreclosure, the owner can then collect the premium bid from the county. So assume we were successful in the foreclosure of this property. The homeowner could then, once we did our eviction and our foreclosure, the homeowner could then go to the county and say, "Hey, look, I want the $102,400 that this tax buyer bid up in premium on the property." Come on.
Is it not advancing? I see if I can. All right, I advanced it. So hopefully, you can take control back here in a second.
Right. Okay. All right. So secondary market tax liens and pre-deeds. Now we have presentations specific to this because it can get pretty complex. Secondary market tax liens became a big business probably about the same time as the market was making a nasty downturn. Too many liens were being left unredeemed, and there's investors that are just interested in liens. So it created a great marketplace. Now this property I'm showing you here, I will give you full disclosure. It wasn't one of ours, but it's such a remarkable turn of events. I like to example it because I honestly don't know how she managed to turn this into such a great profit. She clearly knew something that we didn't, and shared her story with us. So the process to secondary market is pretty simple. Let's use Georgia as our example. A lot of folks will buy in Georgia and they want that 20% penalty, but they don't want the REO that comes out of the backside of that. So they offload those liens right before the foreclosure process starts. So you can pick up those liens, essentially for what they have in them, plus, some transfer fees, that sort of thing, and initiate the foreclosure process on your own. So that is another off-market option that nobody thinks about. That most people in this industry, I'd say it's a 1% club, thinks about for acquiring off-market deals, and they are all over the state of Florida. Again, we don't do any investing in Florida, but there are tens of thousands of secondary market opportunities to acquire in Florida. Now, Florida is a little tricky. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And personally, I would wait till it got to the tax deed stage if I were buying in Florida. But this is a great opportunity for off-market deals, because essentially it is gone through the redemption period. You're ready to engage in foreclosure, and you're going to acquire it. I hate the term for pennies on the dollar, but you're going to acquire it for far less than it's actually worth, even if it were in a wholesale deal. So where do these liens come from? All right, so as I mentioned, some investors can't take the REO. You have redemption investors and you have property investors. Redemption investors, they want high yield return on the redemption of liens. So these are usually hedge funds and institutional buyers that are buying heavy in Illinois and buying heavy in Florida. They're definitely buying very heavy in Florida. Property investors are folks that the onesies and twosies, we call them, investors that are most likely on this call. They want the property, they want to fix it, they want to flip it, they want to turn it for cash quick and move on to doing the next one. So why don't the investors keep the property? So we're talking about redemption investors here. And I always use the example of, when we hit the global financial crisis in 08 through, we'll call it 13, banks were essentially upside down. They were taking on too many foreclosures and didn't have enough cost to carry. So it created a massive cash flow problem. Same theory applies to the big hedge fund and institutional buyers that buy in states like Florida and states like Illinois. Their model requires them to be buying and selling tax liens, not acquiring REO. So if they acquire too much REO, that hinders their buying power for more tax liens. So that's where they come from. They can't keep it. So it's an opportunity for an investor like you who does want to take the property to acquire it for essentially what they've got invested into it. There's probably going to be a little bit of a markup, but it's not going to be much, and you're going to pick it up for far less than what it's worth. Here's an example of one in Illinois, and I do an entire presentation that's based just on this example, because Illinois it's not as complex in the laws as Florida, but it's probably definitely running number 2 to Florida. This one, the total investment on a secondary market purchase would have been $9,067.72. Now, our market value shows it as $26,185. We always discount the values. We devalue everything because it's distressed real estate. We assume there's going to be things that are happening. This one was actually worth, and it sold in 2016 for $35,000. So you can assume that's essentially what it's going to be worth if you were to acquire this through a secondary market acquisition. Then we have pre-deeds and tax deeds. So essentially all we're doing is we're kicking the can down the road a little bit further. So if those institutional buyers couldn't sell in the secondary market, they still need to foreclose, because that's their leverage to get their money back. So they're still going to initiate that process. They're going to push it through the foreclosure process, and they're going to have that pre-deed. And they know that deed's coming, and they know that deed's going to cause some cost to carry. They're going to have to insure it. It's going to be on their books as REO. And any of the institutions they're leveraging with, they're going to see that and say, okay, you've got too much in your REO package. You're only going to get X amount of dollars for your auctions next year in tax liens. So they will offload it as a pre-deed before they have to pay all the back taxes, go to the secondary auction as they have in Florida, and go through all those steps. So it's essentially same idea, same principle, kicking the can down another 9 months and picking it up right as it's coming out of the foreclosure process. All right, so let's talk about Florida. As I've mentioned a number of times, we don't invest in Florida. We eventually hope to get into Florida because there are some great investment opportunities down there. But our bread and butter, like I said, it was investing in tax liens when we first started, and when auctions went online. Florida was one of the first states to really jump on board, and it literally went from having call it 50 qualified bidders in a room in Duval County, Florida, competing against each other, to over 50,000 registrants trying to register for the tax sales. That's why the institutional bidders are so heavy in Florida, because the cost to attend is next to nothing. So their costs are really just in the due diligence that they're required to do. In Florida, they have a unique law. So if you buy a tax lien, it earns 5% in penalties. Now that's a pretty small margin for me, but if you're promising your investors, 2.25% in their CD that they're holding at your local bank, you're making pretty good on the margin. So everything in Florida, essentially, with the exception of some dogs and ditches, because they literally sell those too, everything goes at 0.25%, because they're hedging on getting that 5% in penalties within the first year. Once that stops happening, the terms get a little crazy. So Florida is unique. You buy a tax lien for 0.25%, you hold on to it for a couple years, and then you go through the foreclosure process through the county. So it's not necessarily judicial in the sense that you're hiring an attorney to do it. It's going through the county process, and then they're actually going to sell that opportunity on the courthouse steps again through another auction process. So you essentially have to be the high bidder on your own tax lien. So it's a bit of an odd process. Nobody does it better, explains it better than the Palm Beach County Clerk's Office. So they have online, it's free. It's called the Tax Deeds Workshop. It explains to you how the process works. It's very thorough, and it comes from the horse's mouth. That you really can't get it any better than it is. But as you can see, a certificate holder is billed to do the foreclosure process. It's done through the county. It works like a judicial process, but it's all done through the county. These slides are literally taken from the county clerk's presentation. So it really lines it all out. They recorded it live, with a lot of folks in the room. So you hear all the questions and answers, and it's very, very, very thorough presentation. So I'm certainly not going to try and step on what they did, but as you can see, they have a full room there. You get all the questions and answers. I've got the link to that presentation here, but if you just go to Palm Beach Clerk and search for tax sales, you'll wind up and find this as well, and find more information actually on the tax lien sales as well. So with that, I'm pretty much wrapped up here. I've got one more slide that just kind of highlights this crazy deal in the secondary market. So she purchased this thing for $13,309.90. She sold it for $65,000. She actually did it on a contract for deed, which maximized her profits even more with the interest she tacked on. So she's essentially pulled out a 563% profit. Now, no way in whether I was sick or healthy would I ever say that we could come up with that kind of profits. But she managed to really be creative and did an amazing deal on this investment. So with that, I am done, and we can go to questions.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Charles. Yeah, we have plenty of questions here. I have the information here. One of the questions we had, somebody asked how they can get the wholesalers' contact info, and you mentioned that a while back. I assume they can call or email here on this slide. You'll be able to put them in touch with that person, or
Yep, absolutely.
okay. Also, the next one was, let's see. I guess you're mentioning a lot of the wholesale deals. You're mentioning the Panhandle. One of the questions was, do you know how those wholesalers are typically getting those deals up in the Panhandle of Florida from the hurricane?
We haven't gone in depth as to how they're pulling these deals. We know in a lot of the cases the insurance companies have essentially called total loss, and people have vacated the properties, but they're not. It could just be. In my own experience, 2 years ago we were hit pretty hard with a hurricane, and people were essentially buying them out for what their insurance premium was cutting them short on. For example, we had $107,000 in damage to our house. The insurance gave us $56,000. So a lot of investors were saying, okay, hey, you know what? We'll buy the house since you want to leave, and we'll give you an extra $40,000 on top of what the insurance premium is giving you. You transfer the title to us. So that I know is one way they're doing it, but I'm not a wholesaler. I buy from wholesalers, so I couldn't necessarily tell you how they're acquiring them.
Okay, yeah, and a couple more questions just on the wholesale realm. One person, well, as far as the disaster area, are there any benefits for purchasing in distress zones that were hit by natural disasters? Maybe is there anything, maybe I guess, other than perhaps obviously reduced prices due to what happened?
Right. Yeah. I mean that is the big winner, and some people, they just get fed up, and they're ready to go. One hadn't hit there in so long, and same thing with our situation. One hadn't hit us in 129 years when it hit us. We stayed for it because we said, it's not going to hit. It's going to blow up and hit Wilmington like they always do. So there is advantage because there's a ton of inventory that suddenly comes on the market. It's still an area that's in demand. People are still going to live there. Florida obviously is one of the most popular states in the country to move to and to invest in. So the demand is always going to be there. So absolutely, if a hurricane's whipped through, it's going to be a good area to get into.
All right, I had a question here I think I can answer. Someone was asking, can I do an equity loan on a joint venture deal with an investor? And if you're talking about your IRA, certainly it's a matter of structuring that deal properly, outlining exactly what you're going to get or your IRA is going to get out of that particular deal. Obviously, it depends on who the other investor is and what terms that they're willing to agree with you. But I don't think that there's any issue with doing that as far from a legal standpoint. Kind of on the financing side, Charles had two questions. One, someone noticed that most of the deals that you showed were kind of needed cash offers. That seems limiting to the person doing it. But then another person asked, do you ever use hard money lenders to get the deal done and then hope to flip that property, in time to pay off the hard money loan?
Yes, absolutely. Obviously from the auction standpoint, you can't necessarily do it because they want to know what you're acquiring. They want to do an appraisal themselves independently, and so forth. But if it's a wholesale deal, absolutely, you can put that under contract and then go to the hard money guys. If it's live auction or even if it's an online auction, you're going to be restricted a lot more. But it's absolutely an option. Something that we're seeing a lot more of because the hard money is getting so much more affordable. It's no longer at those 12 and 16% marks. It's like 6 and 8. Is people are leveraging both their SDIRA with hard money, kind of like you know I don't want to speak too much to it, but I would refer to it as almost like a JV between the two. Now I know there's restrictions on what SDRAs will allow and which ones won't. Some allow checkbook LLCs, some don't. But we are seeing that happen quite a bit these days.
Yep. And yeah, someone mentioned too, and talking about leveraging, if you're doing that inside an IRA, just be aware that you can subject your IRA to a tax called UBIT or unrelated business income tax. So just be aware of that if you're looking at using your IRA account. Kind of going now back to maybe some people had some questions regarding the tax distress properties. How do maybe what's the best place to find the leads for those tax distressed properties, and especially the secondary market tax liens you were talking about?
Okay, one, you can contact us, but so for the secondary market, it's going to be a lot of hedge fund buyers. You can get their contact information direct from the counties that you're interested in seeing what they have. But there are also now a few groups out there that are wholesaling on behalf of tax buyers. So if you contact us, we can get you that information as well, and you can see the list of either secondary or actual tax deeds that they've got on their books.
And yeah, I guess I'm saying, where do these pre-deed off-market sales exist in Georgia? I don't know if that's kind of the same question, but
Yeah, so in Georgia, there's not a lot. There are pre-deeds, but there's not as much of it as the foreclosure inventory. And quite honestly, if you're interested in the pre-deed off market, I would say just stick to the traditional foreclosure sales, because you're going to have more inventory and more opportunity than acquiring the pre-deeds.
and I guess you mentioned obviously a lot during the webinar of being shying away from at least Florida. Someone said they didn't catch the reason. Is it because the interest rate was too low on the tax liens, or is it the laws in Florida, or is there too much competition? Just maybe elaborate a little bit on that.
It's a great question. So yeah, so it's all the above. Pockets in Florida are great, but because we're as an individual, I think Florida is a great investment area in certain pockets. As a company, we have to be really vested in the area for a considerable amount of time to build up our rehab teams and our on-site folks and all of that, and so we've just stayed away from it because the competition has been absolutely crazy. On the tax lien side of things, yes, the bidding is just nuts. It's not even worth the time to do the due diligence. The laws, not necessarily the laws, but uh, the all the city stuff that goes on in Florida. They're very good at hitting you for the littlest things, long grass, that sort of stuff. So from a distress standpoint, you've really got to do a lot of due diligence, before you even get to that tax deed sale, to make sure that they're not hammering the property with fines and violations that you know we've seen them as high as $300,000 on a property that was worth 50, and they won't budge to reduce that rate, so at least it's creating some taxable value again. So for all those reasons, we've stayed out of Florida, and we are looking at doing distressed pockets, panhandle area, and popping in there, doing some of those, and then popping back out and doing what our bread and butter is. We invest in areas we call recession proof. We invest in properties we call recession proof. So there's, rather than a hurricane that has created a huge inventory, there's a consistency of growth going on. There's obviously a lot of buzz, a lot of talk about Long Island, New York right now, and Raleigh, North Carolina, because Amazon's moving into those areas. Well, yes, they are, but so are all of the institutional buyers. So we stay out of those areas. We invest in areas that they have. For example, Savannah, Georgia, they're building out the ports to be one of the world's or the nation's largest. That's supposed to bring almost 30,000 new jobs by 2021. That's a 10% population growth. So that's unheard of. That's nuts. So we're buying blue collar homes, easy stuff to fix and flip, easy stuff to afford, and that's essentially our focus. We're also heavy in Augusta, Georgia right now, because of some military activity that's going on. We're test marketing some other areas as well, that we'll probably get into in the future. But the short answer to why we're not in Florida is everybody wants to be there, and the margins are just they're tough to come by.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions, and we're going to wrap it up here, folks, in just a minute with another question or two. But somebody asked about again which areas are recession-proof. How you find it sounds like it's you find maybe an industry that's moving in there or changes the government is making to bring more people into that area, like you said with Savannah. Is that kind of how you look for recession-proof areas?
Exactly, exactly. And then make sure you're buying recession-proof properties. So if it does slow down, if the market does slow down, and lenders stop lending like it happened before, at least your cash flows are still going to be strong. You may not be a cash flow investor, but if all of a sudden the bottom falls out of the market and we have another huge rental market, you want to make sure your cash flows are still good. So most of what we buy is we're not having to think about granite. We're not having to think about upgraded fixtures and appliances. We're using the same color paints, everything, and just like we saw in the last recovery, we're buying properties that are going to be first to get the best deals and the best grants. First-time home buyers, VA, those low to middle income properties that are going to be the first to fix, the first to flip, and will also cash flow very well should lenders stop lending at some point.
All right, folks, we're out of time. I would say we had a couple of questions that we just didn't get to. I would encourage you, we have Charles and the PIP Group's information here on the screen. Give them a call, give Charles a call. Questions you have regarding this presentation. Charles, I think great job today. I think shared a lot of good information. Again, people can visit Charles' website. You can get in touch with them to get even more information. We're probably going to have Charles back again here in a next month or two as well to kind of share his thoughts on other things as well. So just again, thank you, Charles, for coming on today. I appreciate you sharing information with everyone.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it as always. Look forward to the next one.
All right, again, thank you again, everybody, for attending. And if you have any other questions, please reach out on IRAs. You can reach out to myself. My contact information is here as well, or check out our YouTube page. So again, thank everybody for listening, and we'll see you again.